Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of UX Copenhagen. Well, I wish, but Conversations with UX Copenhagen, which is a kind of video cast, I guess you could call it, where I speak with upcoming speakers. And I'm just really stoked to finally have Greg Nudelman on the line. Before I start, though, I want to say that UX Copenhagen is a safe stage for all voices and different voices. And we do not tolerate any kind of harassment or discrimination. And anyone who participates in anything around UX Copen is agreeing to our code of conduct. And you can find it on our webpage if that is necessary. I also want to tell you guys that I met Greg Nudelman about 5 years ago. I was looking at our emails, and it seems that we've known each other for about 5 or 6 years. And it's really funny because Greg, you were actually, we met online. We had a Skype meeting back then, and you were actually in your home. And it was the very first time that I had talked to somebody in their own home. And, who knew that was going to become the norm in 2020?
Exactly.
That's funny. Yeah. So 5 years later, here we are. And finally, I get to invite you to stage, which is, about time.
It's a pleasure to be here. I must say, yeah, it's a long time coming.
Long time coming, and hopefully, we get to invite you to Copenhagen for real, in real life someday soon. Anyway, Greg, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been an independent consultant for, gosh, I guess I've been in some sort of digital product industry for 21 years, which is just a long time. Much of it has been in the UX, but my background is one of being a developer in the DBA. And in the last 6 years, I've been really focused on how we can do DesignOps better, which is basically how can we communicate as designers with developers, with product managers, just how do we kind of all get together and create products faster and better.
Yeah. Okay, because that was my next question is how do you define DesignOps? Because it's a buzzword right now, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions about what DesignOps is. But
sure, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people do define it differently. And I'm really happy that there's a great diversity of voices in the industry, and I think we need more, because one thing that I found to be the case is that nobody has sort of the right way to do UX, and I think it's just a fallacy to even suggest that something's right or wrong. It's more like what works in a particular organization. And the way that I think of DesignOps is just a path to execution, because UX went from being sort of this idea that we're going to productify things to being this idea that we're at the heart of everything. And I think that the truth is sort of somewhere in the middle, where yes, we're in the heart of everything, but we're also an equal and equally committed participant in shipping of a product, which is or service, which is what I call UX execution, if you will. So it's putting, it's a portmanteau of two words, UX and execution. So it's literally, how do we ship products? And this is my definition of DesignOps, is just helping people ship stuff. Mm-hmm. How do we ship faster? How do we ship products that are better within the time that is allotted to us by the shipping schedule, by the commitments that the customers have, et cetera. So it's not a simple, it's more of an art at this point than a science, I would say. It's very much sort of at the beginning stages, and that's what makes it exciting to me. It's also something that I know I can get so much better at, even after 6 years of being director, senior director in variety of companies, big and small. I'm just learning how much I don't know. I see a few things that work, but a lot of things that don't, and it's really quite shocking, because we're UXers, right? We're all about the customer. In this case, the customer is developers, is product, is executive leadership team, and how do we sort of streamline that whole connection to them in addition to connecting with the actual customer of the product, is what DesignOps is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense, and I agree with that. So, and you're writing a book about this.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be my fifth or sixth. I kind of lost track somewhere. It depends how you count, but it's I'm pretty excited about the topic, and anytime I highly recommend anyone who wants to kind of learn a discipline, you just commit to writing a book about it. And let me tell you, by the time you're done with the book, you're gonna be as good as you can be, because all it is.
How do you find time? I mean, you're a director, you have your own company, and you find time to write books. I mean, how do you do it?
I guess, you know, I don't keep up with the latest Game of Thrones reruns, right, maybe, or, you know, instead of it's either one or the other, the way I see it. Mm-hmm. I also, you know, I try to really limit kind of how much time I spend on things that, you know, just being brutal. I think that's one thing that I kind of talk about in DesignOps and UXecution, the blog that I have dedicated to this, is you have to be very selective in what you engage in and what you don't, and it's something I've learned over the years. The first one took 2 years to write. The second one maybe 3 months. So it's not it's not sort of the time, but it's the focus more than anything. It's the kind of the energy that you put in, more so than the time. And I strongly believe anyone can write one. If you've ever written anything, you could probably write a book about it. You just have to really care about the subject. Okay, well, and the TV sucks, so, you know, why not? Right? We're all stuck at home. Yes. Yeah. I'm also punishing myself by trying to learn Arabic, which is really difficult. Yes, I have smattering of variety of languages, including some English here and there, but it's Arabic is really challenging. It's, if anybody knows how to speak that, it's my hat's off to you. If you learn it as a second language, it is really hard. So, but yeah, I mean, you gotta amuse yourself somehow, right? You gotta yourself. Yeah. COVID is tough for everybody.
Mm-hmm. What are you using to learn Arabic then?
This app called Pimsleur.
Okay.
It's yeah, it's been really fun. It's a very different way to use your brain, so it kind of rests from the rest of it. But it's very humbling also, because you just like, oh yeah, I know this. Oh yeah, I know that. Like, oh, you know, you kind of feel established in some way, and then something like this comes along and you're like, I am just as helpless as a newborn babe. I cannot say a single thing, and you know, it's very challenging. I think that part is always a good lesson, as like on a personal level, because then you feel humbled, like, what else do I not know? Like, what do I not know about DesignOps or design or coding or anything else? And the landscape is always changing. It's like, if you don't like change, this is the wrong industry to be in. This is kind of embodying where what I call ombudsman of innovation, UX, right? And part of it is just working with AI and working with all these new technologies, and we're always on the forefront of change. And DesignOps is also right there. It's always improving. It's not ever a steady state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the same with most things, all right?
Absolutely.
And, you know, I know
it's just fast. It's just faster, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you said, you know, who are we to say what's right and wrong, and that UX is executed in many different ways. One of the things we're thinking of doing at the conference is kind of I don't want to call it manifesto, because people are going to slaughter me for saying that, but, you know, like in
who made the first manifesto, and why is such a bad word now? Was it the Communist Party? Was it the Communist Manifesto that started it all?
Is
Is
that
that why
why?
it's such a dirty word?
Or
I
is it
don't. I
because
don't think it's a bad thing. Maybe I
okay,
grew
I
up in
don't
Ukraine,
either.
so maybe that's why I
You know,
sort of used
I
to
mean,
hearing it.
it's kind of what we've been talking about several times with many different people is that, doctors have this the oath of what's it called?
Yes,
Yeah, I keep forgetting
Hippocratic
what it's
oath. Yeah.
Hippocratic oath. Thank you very much. And
Mhm.
why don't we have that for designers or for anybody else, for other fields
Yes.
also? So there are a few initiatives. I know that there's a thing called the Copenhagen letter that I've also been part of signing at least, and where
Wonderful.
you kind of declare that what you do is going to be ethically correct. But we want to do something about, like a UX kind of, I think we're calling it sustainable UX. So that kind of oath. Do you think that, you say that, we can't really decide what's right and wrong, but do you think
Mm.
it's okay to do that kind of thing or?
Oh yeah, I just meant. Yeah, I should probably clarify. Uh, there's what I meant is there's no right or wrong way to kind of run design ops from the standpoint of effectiveness,
Okay.
purely from the effectiveness standpoint. So if you say, Jared Spool does a fantastic talk about this. He says, if you approach every UX project as with a recipe, it's may not always apply. For instance, if you're cooking
Mhm.
something, you always make a roux, and no matter what you're making, if you're making a cake, you still make a roux. You know what a roux is? Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
clarify. It's a southern, it's a kind of a southern style. It's actually a French dish that was adopted in a lot of New Orleans style kind of Creole cuisine. And what it is a very lengthy process of taking some kind of fat and then mixing it with flour, and so you make a roux. So
Yeah.
it takes you 30 minutes, you make a roux. And then, so no matter what you're cooking, you start by making a roux. So this is kind of the dogma of UX in his mind. It's you always start by making something. And he's always been inspirational to me because he kind of cuts to the core. Rather than having a dogma, you should have instead a set of reusable tools and a big tool belt as big as you can, and then you pull out the tool that actually is going to work for something. So if you're making a cake, you don't need to make a roux.
Mm.
In the same way, if we say design ops, oh, you must have Jira, you must be agile, you must have like the kickoff meeting, and if it's very prescriptive, it's probably not going to be effective if you're coming in and you're the sole design ops person in your company, or you may be the sole UXer in the company, and a lot of the stuff is just way too heavy. You don't need to do this stuff no more than you need to make a roux for cake. Um, Maybe you're just there to put the chair in a cake, and again, don't need to make a roux. So what I'm trying to say is, from the effectiveness standpoint, purely, what works in your organization doesn't necessarily is not necessarily translatable to another organization. Let me give you an example. What worked in we had in GE, for instance, when I was working there as a senior director, we had 4 UX departments, um, out of which I was heading one, and then we had all sorts of very complex relationship between these 4 things. That was sort of 80% of the time spent dealing with that, as opposed to the actual delivery was not as important as what was out there like 2 years out, or the relationship with the main Predix platform was much more important again than sort of the day-to-day with your PM. Now if you're in a startup, to give you another example, I was at a startup in San Francisco, again dealing with AI, so same space exactly, but a completely different thing. There the direction changed literally every 2 hours.
Oh.
What's the MVP? Okay, well, now we're working on that. What's the okay, now we're working on that. Right. So you had to be a very different set of tools. You had to pull out very different set of tools out of your tool belt. So the way that I approach the topic is I just provide in the book and in the blog and in the workshop um, that we'll be working with in UX Copenhagen coming up. We're just going to be giving you a set of tools. Now, whether a particular tool applies, it's up to you. But all tools are ethical. All
Mhm.
tools need to be applied in the ethical way. Like, if you pull out a hammer, you can hammer a nail in the Burning Man structure, or you can hammer a nail in somebody's cage, right? So you really need to ask yourself, is this the right nail for me to hammering?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of examples of where people were not hammering the right nail. You just have to look at 2014 election and sorry 2016 election and the social media and the part the social media and the algorithms therein have played in the outcome that we have experienced worldwide. So I think you don't need to look very far out of California. How do you sleep? Are you going to be okay sleeping with that decision
Right.
a week from now, right? Are you doing the right thing? But a lot of times, so from purely effectiveness standpoint, there is a hammer. But what do you do with the hammer is going to really be important to
Right.
define going forward and how ethical that action would be.
Right. The unintended consequences, right?
Yes, and a
Yeah.
lot of times it's very hard to predict. I mean, that's a tough problem because we are in the forefront, right? And small tweaks we do often result in huge consequences for the world, the global village down the road. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely not the expert on this. There are many people that have been making fantastic strides on the topic. All I kind of try to um, all I can offer is some of my own experiences with unintended consequences, and just to kind of give you an example. I don't know if you. This is a bit off topic, but
It's fine.
it sounds like that may be of interest. All right, so I early in my career, actually, it was my first true UX gig. We were making a system. We were converting a system, so it consisted of manually sorting loan papers. If you ever applied for a loan for a property, there's a ton of different papers are involved. There's intervening assignment, there's a HUD, there's like all this stuff that maybe 30 plus documents
Mm.
that are involved. And so because of the way the system was set up, it was billed outsourced. So with no UX involvement, you could only process one type of document at a time. So they literally had set up a room with 32 baskets for 32 types of documents. So they would take a loan package, which was already collated, all the documents in one package. They would split it up by type, put it in the basket, print as a barcode for each one of these, 32 barcodes, up to 32 barcodes, put a rubber band around it, put it in the basket. Then another person would scan the barcode, put it in, but the barcode was not, anyway, it's absolute nightmare. Then they had to go and hunt for all the pieces to put it back together for storage after it was processed. So we said, oh, that's no good, right? Let's just have a drop down that says which type of document. Oh, how about multiple select? Oh, we can have just one barcode that specifies which types of documents. So anyway, we've streamlined it by probably a factor of 20. But and sounded great. The head of the department was ecstatic. He said, "This is the best thing I ever got from IT. It's just amazing. It's going to allow us to get rid of 7 people."
Oh.
And I went, "What?" Like full stop. 7 people had a job. It was a crappy job, splitting loan documents. Like let's be real here, right? None of us really want to do that, but it's a job. They had an income. Maybe they were supporting a family. Maybe they're the only income earners for the family.
Yeah.
And the place was way out in the boonies. So there's not a lot of options. It's not like San Francisco or Copenhagen, right? It's out in the middle of nowhere. There's not a lot of jobs. So it was something I had to really get over many years after that. It took me many years of processing to even do that. Now, fortunately, what they did is they didn't actually fire the people. They reassigned them for other tasks, so they kept them they kept them employed. But that is a very real consequence of implementing stuff like AI, self-driving cars, or even anything to do with pattern recognition or machine learning. It's going to flip the switch on less manual work and more machine work, more software. So software is eating the world. It's eating you know, in a very real world, in a very real way, it's eating the world. So it's not that jobs are going to disappear. People are going to be doing other things. That was kind of one lesson, and you may not be the one to stop it. But at the same time, there is this unintended consequence that had I thought about it some more, I probably would have understood that that's what was going to happen. But I didn't, and that's on me, and that's on all of us to think about what would happen if we did this as designed. What is the actual thing that's going to happen? Sometimes hard to predict, sometimes easy. In this case, it should have been easy. I just lacked the experience. So we need frameworks very urgently. We need frameworks. We need to read. We need to discuss it amongst ourselves. We need to come to terms with our impact in the world as a tribe. And we need to call out people that have flagrantly not done it, and maybe, you know, not necessarily hold them to task, but maybe have sort of cautionary tales of, you know, so and so tweaked the algorithm in Facebook, and Mother Jones was not nowhere near in the results set. Instead, there were all these alt right wing white supremacy groups. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Whoever tweaked that algorithm, I hope they can sleep at night.
Yeah.
So right.
Sometimes you wonder.
So, you know, stuff like that. We need to talk about it. We need to have that be present in our conversation, because that is very real levers that we have as UXers. And we need to have be able to say, you know, it takes a lot to stand up to your boss or to somebody who ships and says, I don't want to be part of that. I'm going to leave this job, right? And sometimes it's the first job out of college, and, you know, it's not so easy.
It's
so
really
there's
tough,
a lot of considerations there. There's a lot of baggage to unpack.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and, you know, usually
went dark there for a second.
No, I think it's good. This is what I love about these conversations, is that they go in all directions, right? But one thing about Facebook, or, you know, these kind of things, usually you can say, well, that was not the intended consequence. I mean, that was not what was intended with, for example, Facebook, where, you know, you can't really say that with the Facebook example, because, you know, the way he built it was actually to shame women and all that, blah, blah. But, you know, in most cases, I would say that, you know, somebody who produces a knife did not necessarily think that it would be used to kill somebody, right? It's for use in the kitchen instead, or whatever, right? So normally you would be able to say, well, this was not the intention of the product, but somebody, you know, tweaked it, misused it. And I don't know if that you can avoid that ever happening, you know.
What's I think that's a very good point. One interesting thing that happened after Biden got elected, and I've been reading a lot about it, is financial companies stepped in, and there suddenly are financial consequences to making some of these decisions. And suddenly they were able to remove all the offending material and hit cancel on a bunch of alt-right groups and QAnon and the other bunch of nonsense, Jewish space lasers and the like. They were able to hit the cancel button.
Yeah.
Amazing, right? Like, you actually have a block button. You can do that from as an owner of this framework, of this network, of this social platform, whatever it is. There is ability to do it. So if there's actually financial consequences for this company, then suddenly the needle flips the other way. But if left to their own devices with no consequences, what happens is a lot of people are just complaining on Twitter, and yeah, maybe there's a, you know, Twitter storm and stuff, but pretty soon it blows over, and they just keep trying to skirt the edge and keep trying to, you know, oh, can we make a few bucks out of this alt-right group? Let's just kind of put them in the corner here, and maybe they won't cause trouble. They will cause trouble.
Yeah.
My grandfather fought the Nazis, and, you know, the fact that we have a resurgence of fascism is extraordinarily troubling to me.
Yes.
Worldwide, it is just shocking, and people just have such short memory to forget that.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, I don't know why it's going so dark, but the point I'm trying to make is maybe financial consequences and you know, makes it real for these folks, and that's where it needs to go. And it's sort of a tool of last resort, but it's also maybe the very first part is if we leave in droves, that's a good consequence right there, right? So voting with your wallet, uh, talking to regulatory agencies, having a more concerted effort to fight extremism on all front, and to promote discourse that is more open and honest and inclusive is where we need to be worldwide. And technology plays such an important part in all of this. We're right smack in the middle of this. As UXers, we're the best equipped to have that conversation, because it's not all about the profit, and it's not all about the bottom line, but there is actually the customer impact that is considered, and that's part of our tool set.
Yes.
So that needs to be part of the conversation.
I totally agree. Which is what the stage at UX Copenhagen is for. So, Greg, will you tell me a little bit about your upcoming workshop at UX Copenhagen on March 24th?
Oh, wonderful. Yes. So on the lighter end of this, what we're going to do is give you the hammers and the screwdrivers and the pliers and stuff to execute faster within your org. Now, I guess part of it is creating policies. So part of it is having sort of an ethical policy and understanding of what your company does, and having that be a very strong part of DesignOps. In fact, that's what you really start DesignOps with. You start with a simple exercise that defines what constitutes a good design for a good design outcome for your team, right? And that includes all of the values and the business benefits, as well as emotional benefits that the product provides. You create a product pyramid. So you don't always have to do it. Again, it's just one of the tools. Like it's like making a roux, right? Sometimes it's definitely called for, but it's often very beneficial to start with that, because then it allows you to quickly evaluate any and all design efforts. For instance, one of the design principles that we have at Logic Monitor, I have a cute plushy toy with a little squishy robot here. So one of the things that we have in Logic Monitor is efficiency. So that means fewer clicks. That means tighter interface design. That means end-to-end tables. That means no padding, no margins. So if the question comes into you, should I add another row for these functions? The answer is no. It's always no, right? It's very, very simple. It's like it helps you arrive as a designer to that single question, the one question. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie City Slickers, but the Curly's having a very memorable conversation with the main character, and he says, you know what the secret of life is? And he says, what? It's the one question. He says, what's the question? It's the one thing. He says, it's the one thing. He says, well, what's the thing? He says, that's what you have to figure out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly what it is, right? If you look at Southwest Airlines, for instance, one of my favorite success stories, they operate out of Texas. Their question is, we're the low-cost airline. So if the question is, I have an idea, let's serve caviar and crackers during our flight. The question is this going to help us be the low-cost airline?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is pretty obvious. No, right? Should we have people sit down anywhere they want in their don't have a queue. So you can just get people moving faster onto the plane. Amazing concept, right? Every single airline has a queue. They don't. There's like, go.
Yeah.
Right. It's printed on your ticket. Get in there. So the answer to that is yes, because then there's less checking and less sort of policing, and there's there's fewer agents. There's only one agent usually, at the front gate. There's at least 2 for every other airline. So that helps you cut the cost. So yes, that helps. Incidentally, it's actually a better boarding experience. So, so coming up with that question is a huge sort of foundation. What are the values of your product? What are the values that you're that you're giving to the consumer? And then you can always ask that question. So that's just one example of a tool that we'll be talking about. Others include, how do we communicate better with the developers? What are we talking about in terms of, how many wireframes is the right amount? How do we set up the wireframes to be more efficient? One of the things I like to talk about is how the use cases is at the heart of everything we do. So it starts with an agile use case. As a user type X, I can do Y so that I can get Z benefit, right? Then we take the same statement, we rephrase it as a usability test. We say, as a new user, I would like to be able to check out with my credit card and enter my and check out, basically have the stuff shipped to me and pay with my credit card. So the way you rephrase it is go ahead and check out and then see what they do, right? So it's a very realistic way of approaching things. It also helps you just define a few set of wires on which you hang the entire experience. And it helps you define your success as a designer. Yeah, there may be other things that come up during this investigation. That's normal, but you start out with asking, what does success look like? And then if we hit these 5 use cases with this product improvement, then that's good to go, right? So almost every single design that we do contains this index page, which with these questions, and you click on the question to go into the task. So as a user, we can immediately put this into user testing. So our prototype that we give to the developers is the same prototype that works for the customer. Now, it's not always the case. So, there's also additional sort of options, for instance, or additional requirements that come up during the discussions with PMs. Like, for instance, something cannot be greater than X, or if your checkout was anything over $1,000, you need to register first, et cetera, ad nauseum. These things are always very complex and they're always involved. So should you build this whole new set of wireframes just to support that use case? No. If the team understands, if the team is on the same page, all you need to do is attach what we call a spec sheet at the end that simply spells that out in plain English. And then if you need to have a visual variation of something, you just give them that variation. You say, when X is this, you do this. And if X is Y, then you do that. And that's it. You don't need to set up another 30-page document. It doesn't serve you. It slows you down. And God forbid, if there's a change, right, you have to go through and update every single one of those components. I mean, it is just a royal pain. And it also makes it more complex at the end to understand what was this designer trying to express with it? And perfect example, we're picking up something that we put down about a year ago. And we're trying to unpack what is it that we've done. And that's a really good test of your documentation as a designer. Can somebody who's not been a part of this project unpack it a year later? That's a tough test, right? How far do you want to get to that is kind of up to you and up to your process and so on. But that is practical, tactical stuff to then help you be strategic. Give you that space, that slack, if you will, to look at things that are more important, like personal relationships within the company, like buy-ins, like establishing a direct link to executive leadership team, like scheduling more presentations about what value UX brings to the table. And then obtaining a seat at the table and be, truly making UX infused into organization. So that's really the whole kind of end all. Sorry, I went on. I tend to wax poetic about all these things because I'm pretty passionate about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's fantastic. I can't wait for this conference workshop. It's going to be fantastic.
Yay!
Yay. I hope everybody here joins us. It's on March 24th, and it'll be early in the morning for you at 2 p.m. Central Eastern Time, Central European Time. So you'll be up
And
early.
I'll have slides, and everybody gets a copy of the book, a free copy of the book when it comes
No
out.
way.
Yes.
Ooh, I did not know that.
If you show up, yeah, I value showing up. 90% of the success is showing up.
Yes. That's awesome. We're going to have to tell people about that. So anybody who attends the workshop gets a free copy of Greg's book. I think that UX Copenhagen will definitely also be buying a couple of books to raffle out during the conference. When is your book scheduled to be released?
That is TBD. Yeah, because COVID and all this other stuff. I was really hoping to have it done before the conference. It's probably going to be after. So
yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
don't feel pressure from us, that's for sure.
Yes, well, it's good to have some pressure is good. Yeah.
I work best that way too, for sure.
Yeah, we like our deadlines. We like the sound that they make wishing by.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's good. So should we start taking some questions? I see that there's a bunch of activity in the chat.
Oh yeah, I saw some stuff pop up.
Yeah, does anybody want to, just pop in? Just go ahead and unmute and jump on in if you have any questions for Greg. Otherwise, I'm trying to read the chat here. Trust and transparency.
I have one question.
Hi, Jan. Welcome.
Hi, Jan.
I'm just started as a UX designer in a computer game business.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yay.
So it's a lot of difference between what I've done before. Before it was like efficiency to create an experience that is fast through some sort of flow. But now it's more of finding an experience that fits into the game. So it's not always as efficient as it should be. Sometimes it should be hard. Is that something that you have stepped into in your career and can talk a bit about that?
I am so glad you brought that up. That's actually one of the more understated and subtle things. It is being recorded, so I'm going to be very careful how I'm going to phrase it. But I'm not going to name any names, but there's a giant retailer that sells things in sort of a gamified way. And what we found is that certain people just wanted to buy it at, certain cheaper price and just be done. But there were a whole slew of folks that used it as entertainment. It's sort of like GameStop investment, right? There's perfect parallel, right? It's for fun, right? Everybody's just kind of like trying to poke the eye of a big hedge fund. And the point I'm trying to make is sometimes friction in an experience is exactly what it's called for. Sometimes if we make it too easy, you lose the very heart of why people are doing what they're doing or engaging with it. And the game is a perfect example. Anything gamified, you don't want to make it too easy because then there is no game.
No, then it's boring.
The definition of a game is there's friction. And the way that it comes up in design patterns very often is when we slow people down deliberately because they're about to make something very complex. For instance, if you're trying to wire money, there's a lot of wire fraud, right? I don't know if you know this. So if you wire the money, it's gone. They pull it out of your account, gone, right? So if you didn't put in the right account number, it's bye-bye, right? Whatever. So you want to slow them down there, right? You want to have maybe 3 confirmations. Are you sure? Here's a disclaimer. Make sure you sign the disclaimer. Make sure you read the disclaimer all the way down. This is not your typical sort of disclaimer that everybody's like, oh my God, not another disclaimer, not another cookie disclaimer. Mm-hmm. My Lord, what a terrible decision that was, right? I think we can all agree on that.
In a way, though, it's also sort of really important. Sorry.
No, it's true. I mean, exactly, right? You're the sort of law of unintended consequences. I think it's one of those like best intentions, but it is, when you're doing a wire transfer, you probably want to slow them down. You want a little more friction. a lot more friction. And that's okay. That's actually by design, right? So you want to be very deliberate about the level of friction that you're introducing. So I'm really glad you brought that in. Yeah. Helle, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, we're actually doing it in another way now. We are trying. We have a store in our game. It's not a released game yet, but everyone has stores, so I think I can say that. So instead of having all these pop-up saying, "Do you really want to buy? Do you really want to buy?" We are taking it in the other direction. So we're actually giving the possibility to give back and get back our money again.
Oh yeah,
if you
nice.
have bought something that is wrong. And we're trying out that to the players right now to see if that is something that makes it easier to buy, because you can redraw it afterwards.
If it's a good game, people will buy more,
Yeah.
and if it's a poor game, then then that would be kind of the opposite effect. But yeah, it's if you believe in the product, that's the right way to go. It's undo is one of the most important. It's one of the top 10 heuristics, right? UX heuristics is providing undo, the undo ability. And yeah, Apple, unfortunately, with the DRM, neither Apple nor Amazon really make it very easy. So you're going to be on your own there as a model. But I think that is going to be something that will truly differentiate you if you do it the right way, because then it's basically saying, we're so confident you're going to love this game. We will give you money back. If you play it for an hour and you don't like it, no questions asked. You get your money back. I mean, that's a powerful statement versus some of these other games that are forced to rely on the rating alone and the reviews, and not really on anything else. I think that alone would be a huge differentiator.
Yeah, I hope so. It is a area that when I started, I thought it was like area where UX was far in front of everyone else, but it's totally different. It's far beyond. Back, yeah, exactly. So UX has existed in the gaming area for 5 years. That's it.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's really new. So I'm very alone right now, but we are hiring more people.
Well, that's good. Excellent.
Yes.
You put it in the chat if you're looking for folks. We're yes.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Okay, we've got a question from Rajat. He's asking, is design portfolio really required to find a job? What do you think, Greg?
Yes, absolutely. But the good news is you don't need to have worked in the industry to have a design portfolio. In fact, it's one of the things you can create without having worked. And I honestly don't care if you got paid for it or if it was a volunteer effort. There's tons and tons of opportunities. My first gig in mobile design, for instance, was basically for equity. So that means you don't get paid. That's the translation. If somebody says, "Yeah, you work for equity, you'll be a millionaire," don't believe that. That means you're volunteering, but that's also an amazing opportunity. There's so many startups out there that would love having a UXer, even an aspiring UXer, be part of the team for equity, right? And it's not a very big time commitment. If you're not sure where you find it, you can easily join one of the meetups. There's like, if you go to meetup.com or whatever is active in your particular country or region, you can find a dozen, and it's such an active area today. I mean, I've had experiences attending Mobile Monday, for instance, in Tel Aviv, all the way to kind of Dubai and even in the border of Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil, there is a digital conglomerate that was very much, it's called Latinoware, and I had an absolute blast there. Tons and tons of open software effort. That's another way you can do it. Like, again, not for money, but open source software would love a designer. So that's how you would build it out. It's a fantastic way if you're a coder or a UXer. It really pretty much the same rules apply, and it gives you an opportunity to season in your craft and see your stuff shipped, which is quite remarkable and very empowering. And once it again doesn't take a long time. It's more of the mileage, not the years, to paraphrase um, Indiana Jones, right? It's the mileage, not the years. So again, it's the mileage. You can do this within a year. You can do this, or you can take 7 years and still work on the same um, login form. I've seen both kinds. So
you know
it's
what
up
else
to
you
you.
can do is you can volunteer at conferences.
Yes, thank you for that. Exactly. You can volunteer at conferences and in in fact, as part of sort of design workshops, there's a lot of design workshops. I'm sure there's a few in UX Copenhagen. You would produce some design artifacts. It's DesignOps is a little different. We're more about techniques and sort of making it less frictionless and so on. So there's not going to be a lot of artifacts, but there, a typical design workshop will give you an artifact that you can put in your portfolio. So I'm sure UX Copenhagen offers a few of these. So take a look at the offerings that are available. And it can be done online. And I mean, Sketch is free for the first 30 days and $100 after. It's really not a lot to spend. It's not like Photoshop, where it's $1,000, right? You're $100. Buy, borrow, or steal. And that's what we use. I mean, we all use Sketch. InVision is free for one person. So all the tools are low cost, available, and you can also use open source alternatives if you want. It's all about your effort and your thinking and what you put in there.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question. So Luna had a comment about making user interviews that people are worried that they lose, or that people are not telling the truth during interviews. Yeah. Oh, I heard about somebody who was they were asked to fill out this employee survey, and everybody, it's a pretty big company in the States. I'm not going to mention names.
People lie on employee surveys. Oh my!
Well, you can know, but this guy said that everybody in the department was like, "Oh, good! Now we finally get to voice something to be heard." And they all filled out the survey. The manager came back and he's like, "Okay, everybody, we're doing this one more time, and you better put some really nice answers in there, or I'm going to fire every one of you." And it's
talk about ethically engaged the workforce, right?
Right.
Lord mercy, yeah. Well, I mean, depending on your country or even your company. I mean, I worked for a few companies where dissent was really not appreciated, even at senior director level. We couldn't really say that. Yeah, you couldn't speak up. And it doesn't have to be with the size necessarily. It could be a startup that behaves that way. It could be a large corporation. In fact, many large corporations are getting better about it because they know it's hurting their bottom line. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. Keeping people honest is very difficult. I think that's why I'm not a big fan of surveys, to be honest, to begin with. I think they help you cover a lot of ground very quickly, but the answers are not very high quality because you end up with a survey is pretty well known. You end up with kind of you emphasize the extremes. People that are really, really happy, they'll fill out the survey. People that are really, really pissed off, they'll fill out a survey. People that just had an okay experience, which is majority of the folks by definition, will not fill out a survey. So if you're looking at sort of a standard distribution, you're just getting the outliers pretty much. Now, the way that you combat that is you triangulate any quantitative findings, which is like a survey or some sort of click numbers or whatever with the behavioral survey, right? With some sort of behavioral data, which is either click numbers or in-depth interviews that are behaviorally based. In other words, solve this problem using this interface and let me see how much you struggle or how little you struggle. Then do the same thing on our major competitor and then observe that, right? So you should be running a good number of sessions, but not such a large number that you don't have a lot to talk about. But it's good to kind of have your UXers fight over customer interviews, but not too hard, right? So everybody should get interviews. Now we're like, for instance, at Logic Monitor, where I hold the director position today.
What is that thing? Wait, what is
a little robot. It's one of our, we have all these robots and part of the branding. So this guy is, I don't remember his name, is Bob or something. They all have names that the company votes on. It's actually quite fun. But the point I'm trying to make is we have 10 to 16, 10 to 20 people per week that we interview. So it's really, really important to have that in your company. If you're working on the product and you can't find a dozen people to interview, that is not a good product. You may want to consider changing a job if you can't, because that is never going to sell. And that actually happened to me once. I was at this company and they said, we don't want you talking to customers because we're all, blue ocean, red ocean, all that stuff, right? We're blue, we're going to do it different, and customers just aren't very helpful. They're going to take us down the wrong path. And that whole adage of, you ask 10 customers what they want, they'll tell you a faster horse, and what they really wanted is an electric car. Okay, well, let me tell you what happened, right? So we did our best, but of course, then it becomes hearsay. It's he said, she said, and whoever gets, it's then becomes HIPPO, highest paid person's opinion. So when HIPPO is enraged, right, this it has a certain effect on your deliverable. So 2 years later, they have sold not a single product. So if you can't find a single person to give you evaluation of your product, then you can't sell to even a single person. Very likely. So that is a warning flag of the highest proportion, and you should probably consider looking elsewhere. I mean, you can only try so much, and then you keep getting blocked, and you can't be effective. Not every single relationship is going to work out, and that's part of kind of what I do. What I kind of understood through maturity of 20 years of doing this is not everything's going to work out. Maybe it's you, maybe it's them. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, it's not always in your control whether something's going to work out. So maybe you're better off being somewhere where you're more effective and you can get a hold of customers. So if you're then able to triangulate, get a hold of customers, triangulate quantitative, qualitative, and survey data, you have a complete picture of what is happening, because you have kind of the outliers of the survey, you have the actual clicks, and you see what they're doing, and then you understand the why by interviewing them. You say, yeah, I noticed you did this and this. This is kind of, tell me more about that. Like, how come you went over here, or for what reason, right? I tend not to ask why, because it's more confrontational. So that's one of the things we'll be practicing as part of the workshop, is how to interview folks and how to deliver the findings in a quick, agile, very lean fashion. So it doesn't take up a lot of your time to do this kind of insight sharing. But by triangulating is where you get to the truth. And if one, leg of the stool is missing, you're in the kind of not in the best place.
Isn't it also something you can tell your management then, this isn't going to cost us an arm and a leg, and we can do it really fast?
Yes, it's and a lot of times as you know, it's better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Well, if you say, oh, we got to start this research program. It's gonna, it's gonna be da da da, and it's gonna be amazing. Like, look at all the stuff we're gonna find. And it's gonna be like, I don't know. We're really pressed for time. Why don't you just knock out some wireframes instead? So instead, you say, well, in my spare time, we've spoken with 10 customers, or we've spoken with 10 family members even. Like that's sometimes an acceptable substitute. Depends on what you're making, right? If it's some sort of general purpose thing for, for everybody to use, like for instance, banking application, you can talk to anyone. Yes. But if it's something special for brain surgeons, you may want to have to look for brain surgeons to answer your questions. And it might cost you, but then that will be, money well spent, in my opinion. Yeah. But yeah, so, ask for forgiveness, not permission. Sometimes it's easier to say, oh, and what have you discovered? Oh, good. Okay, cool. And it didn't cost me anything.
Yes.
Right. So everybody's pleased. It's a big win. And you have your answer and you can innovate with confidence. If you don't have those answers, you're like, a person wearing giant welding gloves in a dark room trying to catch a black cat. And it's very, very difficult. You may be able to get lucky if you go like this and not squish the kitty altogether. But most likely you're not going to catch that cat, right? So that's kind of doing UX with no research. The two need to be side by side.
Awesome tips. Thank you so much, Greg. And before we close down everything here, I wanted to ask if we can share your information. Greg, can I share your LinkedIn and?
Sure, please.
Maybe your in fact, handle or something?
If you know anybody in the US, we are hiring. Unfortunately, it's a US only, and I realize this is an international audience. But if you know anybody in the US, it's not always in the US. We have offices all over. We have an office in Stockholm, for instance, and so there's definitely other opportunities. But for this round, we're looking for two folks: a UX designer, the senior UX designer, for our US team. So if you know anybody in the US, coast to coast, remote, who is in SaaS and so on, I'll just put a plug in there. They might enjoy working with us.
Excellent. You can also send me a link to share on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody who wants to connect on LinkedIn and, throw out your handles here if you want to connect to each other today. I noticed people are doing that already in the chat. So please
wonderful.
Feel free to do that. Yeah, it's lovely.
Wonderful.
And does anybody have any last questions? There's like 3 minutes left. Go ahead and turn off your camera if you have a question.
Hey, hello everyone. So my name is Mohna. So I'm from Stockholm, and I'm just going to complete design lead in Hyper Island. So last time we met Helena. So yeah. So it's been like I'm looking for an internship or any jobs because I have a little bit of previous experience in graphic designing, but I'm looking for more about UI and UX because I'm also doing the certification in UI and UX. So can you say like how I can start my career in UI and UX, like a service-based design or a product-based design? Because I don't have any idea about that one, but I really want to start in UI and UX as a career.
Well, I can share kind of how my experience started. I started as a developer, and in those days there wasn't even really a UX position. It was more like, well, here's your developer that also just cares about customers more than you care about the code, or just try to balance the two. So it really doesn't matter how you enter, where you enter from. It's almost like Buddhist Zen, right? Many paths up the mountain. But if you're passionate about it and you see an opening within the company, usually internal people have the first dibs on it. If you also happen to have a portfolio that we mentioned before, like any sort of volunteering work or even equity type of work for a startup or a conference or even a workshop or a class you've taken, that's fantastic. So usually, like, even if you take General Assembly, for instance, you probably have some kind of portfolio. So you can already start applying for an associate positions if you have some sort of certification, or do do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I have a certificate in diploma
Oh,
in animation, and I'm going
fantastic.
to have program diploma in design lead, and I just created my portfolio also with case studies, whatever.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. See, that's you're well on your way. Just, I would say, start applying to associate positions, but don't neglect, making a paycheck while you're, while you're applying. So find the company you're interested in, or something that works for you geographically, that has that you feel some affinity for, and are aligned from the, ethical and um, standpoint, and you would like to work on their products as a UXer, and then make friends with the UX lead and say, hey, I really want to work for you, even if it's, my regular job is whatever. I want to contribute. Can I just do part-time? Can I attend your meetings? Can I help?
Yeah.
I guarantee you they'll find something for you to do.
Yeah,
Like,
because
to give you an example, one of my star performers uh, at Logic Monitor was an executive assistant. She has had an amazing talent for UX. So we initially had an internship that we got her in for, and immediately we saw how awesome she was. And she also happened to have an art background, but again, not necessary. This is UX, not art. So if you have it, great. If you can sketch, fantastic. If you can't, well, this is something you learn. Um, but my point is, it didn't matter. She's a tremendous asset to my team. And she started out as an executive assistant in the same company, and then sort of said, yeah, I'm really interested. Can I just kind of sit in? And then an internship followed, and then pretty soon full-time UXer, and you're on your
People
way.
like
So
people like if you reach out and if you're persistent.
yes.
Yes, I love that. I have Orica, who's my help. She was actually an intern. She's fantastic. And
There you
the only
go. Right.
yeah, see, and
Yeah.
Lone. And the only reason that I met Orica last year, and she pestered me at this event. And she was like, "Yeah, I want to volunteer at the conference." And I have this very solid principle about only, accepting students as volunteers. And she's like, "But I'm almost finished. I only just finished. I'm not really not a student anymore." So persistence pays for sure. So do that. But
Yes,
anyway,
and
I'm gonna have to say that
excellent.
it's
Thank
8
you.
o'clock, so people might have to go. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's been really lovely. I love this discussion. If you want to stay on, just go ahead, but I will just kind of say goodbye to anybody who has to leave, and thanks for joining us.
It's a great
So,
pleasure to be here. Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, Greg. Thanks so much for being here. So we can continue the talk now if you want, but
Sure. I just wanted to mention that, in the 21 years that I've been working, I don't think about, oh, look at all that awesome thing I solved, because 20 years go by, the stuff that you were working on that seems so important to you, that it was a certain color or had a certain shadow, whatever, or that a certain pattern was there, it is moot. It is, the technology is moving so quickly that the stuff you're working on today, a year from now, you're not even going to look back and with any sort of degree of pride. It's all about relationships. So the stuff in sort of my darkest hour, in at 3 a.m., when I'm awake and I'm wondering if I spend my life the right way, I think about all the people that I helped lift up and supported over the years, and the relationships that I've built. That's where my mind goes. It's not about deliverables. It's not about the even shipping stuff. It's about, at the end of the day, it's about relationships and how you were in that, and that's kind of what UX is to me. And that's what DesignOps is. It's kind of the way to build these relationships and have trust and work with, find artisans to work with, not artisans, not assholes, kind of a thing. And so how to be one and not the other, more of one and less of the other, if you will. So Mohana, it's, if you're persistent and you approach it with the kind of an open heart and be open to possibilities, I don't think people are going to say no. I think you'll find it to be a very welcoming tribe, and that is one of the most amazing things about UX. We're still very much tribal, and that means welcoming new members and being protective of them, and kind of giving them what they need to be successful. I see much more of that than any other industry that I've ever touched, and that is something very special about UX. So Godspeed to you and best of luck, and please connect with me on LinkedIn, and we have a Stockholm office. So in case we ever have an opening, definitely we'll reach out and let's chat. But don't wait for me. Definitely, yeah. Go pave your own path.
Definitely.
Thank you. Somehow I hooked up with the UX design something, so I was passionate about to start my career as a UI and UX designer.
Fantastic. And don't discount the writing. I always encourage people to write. It seems very difficult and people are just timid about it, but if you pick a topic you're passionate about, even within UX, whatever it is, DesignOps, AI, whether some design patterns or just a bad experience on the phone that you've had that could be improved, and you have an idea on how to improve it. That's the main thing. If you have an idea how to make it better, that's an article right there. This is sort of the villain, and this is cast the existing experience as the villain in your story, and then this is the hero, is the kind of the new experience, and you put the two together, and it's a story. And and no story is complete without a juicy villain. So you need that. But if you have that and you have the hero, right? You gotta have both. You have your story, and go ahead and get that out there. It's lovely to read, and it shows your passion, and it shows your thinking, your way that you think and apply yourself. And if you take the time to write it, then somebody is it's a lot of work. So if you've done it, it shows commitment and character.
It also puts you on a different level of UX, in my opinion.
Exactly.
It really does. I mean, it puts you right up there with the thought leaders.
Yeah, if you starts the conversation, and sometimes it's a really important topic and nobody's thinking about it. And
and I wanted to ask you also, Greg, do you self-publish, or are you using some?
Yeah, I had all sorts of experiences, having had 5 different books. It's I published kind of as part of magazine with Smashing, and I did one with Wiley and Sons, which is a pretty big one, and then we did one with kind of a collaboration with Wiley and another firm, and then I self-published one as well. So I can answer any questions if anybody's interested in and wants to learn more. I'm happy to help people. I'm at this level of a Maslow pyramid where I kind of need to shut up and let other people talk. I want to hear what you have to say and what you want to write about.
I would invite you. I might ask you about some questions.
Sure.
I have several ideas, of course.
It's fun to self-publish. I think self-publishing is definitely one way up. But if you're writing your first book, then partnering with a publishing house will benefit you in more ways than one. Not only is your cash outlay less or non-existent. In fact, you might get money for your book if you're lucky. These days, it's very hard to get paid for writing, but it's more, unless you're Stephen King or something. 50 Shades of Grey, whatever. Silly thing you're writing. But the important thing is that it gives you a platform to help you promote the book.
Yes.
Because as a new author, you're pretty much unknown, and so it's very, very difficult. Now that also imposes a lot of guidelines. They have their own guidelines about the voice, about the, you know, the content, the length of content. I've had very bad experience with one book because it was like, oh, you know, they put it in this template and they figure out how many pages there is, and the original contract was for 300 pages, and they way underestimated. So they're like, no, you need to write more. I go, but I have nothing more to say about it. Well, how about a summary chapter at the end of each chapter? Like a summary, like some summation, right? Like that should beef it up a little bit. That's how the sausage gets made, right? I can't believe we're recording this stuff. But then I go and I squeeze that out of myself, right? It's like after like 6 months of monumental effort, rewrites, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to squeeze one more time. Turns out way too much. We actually had to dump a chapter.
No.
So I was like, you guys, like, you do one thing. You got one job to do. Publish this book. And you couldn't tell me not to, you know, to stop. Like, oh, right. So it, like, all this wasted effort. So lesson learned, right? For me now, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm basically writing it, and whoever wants to buy it is going to buy it. And if nobody wants to buy it, I'll just self-publish, because I'm at the point where I want to be controlling my content, and I don't want anybody else have any say that needs to be longer or shorter.
Right.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
When I stop talking, it's done. You start at the end. When you start at the beginning, you come to the end, you stop. Like Alice in Wonderland. And there's no more to say. Right. So now that said, if you self-publish, you have to get somebody to proofread it, and that costs money. Yeah. It's about $3,000 to $5,000. It's my experience for a technical book. So you're that's US. In Corona is probably a little different, but it's
a lot more.
it's not cheap.
No.
But you want a good proofreader, because they will point out not just English mistakes, that's one side, but there's a technical editor as well. So technical editor will tell you when things don't make sense, or when you're so completely off base and just full of it. And they'll point, like, I've had that experience. I was like, oh, whoops, yeah. Right. I'm so happy. You've just earned every dollar that I've paid you. Right. Because it's very embarrassing when you come out with something and it's completely wrong. Right. And it almost happened to me. Right. So you don't know everything. It's a lot of it is kind of, based on experience and based on your best understanding, but you can't possibly know everything. That's why you need a team. Yeah. So it will be an outlay. Now, when you self-publish, you can also give the book away. You can do a lot of stuff like that. That you're able, for instance, to give people a digital download, or to give a lot of people to read it before it comes out, and then give you kind of feedback, or give you promotion material and so forth. So there's a lot of flexibility there, but not for new authors. New authors, I would recommend, unless you don't have any other way to go, that self-publishing is awesome. Just, I went with Amazon and Kindle, and it was great.
Awesome.
But if you can't engage with a publisher.
Yeah. What else I'm thinking about is that if you attend like a book review for somebody that's publishing, that's also something you can add to your portfolio, right? Like Mona was asking how to improve things, you could do that also. You could join. I was part of reading a book for somebody, and it's just, you get to know the person, you get to know the book, and it's just really interesting for all parties. And that's something you can add to your LinkedIn profile or your portfolio if you
absolutely.
don't have to.
Being part of the team and being asked to proofread, in fact, volunteer to proofread.
Yeah.
No one's going to turn that down. Like, that's another pair of eyes on it. And you get to preview something that nobody's seen before.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. It's also really unique opportunity to contribute to the community, UX community.
Yep, totally agree. Awesome. This has been so much fun, Greg. Thank you. And thank you also for, putting into words exactly how I feel about the community, and every time I do this conference, I mean, it's blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm asking myself every single year, why am I doing this again? But, the reason is that I love the community. I'm really passionate about the field, and I feel like I make 200 new friends every year. I mean, it's awesome. How much better does that get? So I totally agree with you that at the end of the day, it's going to be about the relationships and not about the color that the button had, or if the shape, you know, if it was rounded or not. And also, it's not about the money made either. So even though that I probably will look back and wish that, you know, I had a profit for just a small one, but you know, it's about the relationships. I totally agree. So,
well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and
thanks
for all the
so
great
much.
questions.
And I can't wait to see you on March 24th.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll be in touch before. Thank you, everybody.